The Reagan Doctrine was the U.S. foreign policy during the Reagan administration and was aimed at supporting regimes and groups that were anti-communist and were in a struggle against either a communist state, occupation, or insurgency. Under the Reagan Doctrine, the United States provided overt and covert aid to anti-communist guerrillas and resistance movements in an effort to roll back Soviet-backed governments in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. The doctrine was designed to diminish Soviet influence in these regions as part of the administration's overall strategy to win the Cold War by increasing defense spending and outspending the Soviet Union. The Reagan Doctrine was successful in flexing U.S. military might and aid against the Soviets who could not match the U.S. economy or MIC. It was also successful in forcing a Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan as the Mujahideen were very well armed by U.S. Stingers and with Pakistani support. In Nicaragua, the Sandinista government lost the 1990 election. In Angola, the Soviets and Cubans withdrew their military support and advisors against the U.S.-supported resistance movements. There are plenty of other examples, but the point is that the Soviets couldn't keep up, and the Reagan Doctrine heavily played a role in the collapse of the Soviet Union. However, it still had some consequences and blowback regarding Operation Cyclone in Afghanistan, where U.S. aid went to Pakistan, and that aid then went to HIG and the Taliban as well as other extremist groups. The Contras in Nicaragua, who murdered civilians and trafficked cocaine, received U.S. support, and also U.S. support went to some dictatorships in Latin America which had lasting consequences. The Weinberger Doctrine was announced in 1984 as a reaction to the previous concerns about repeating the Vietnam War during the 1980s with lessons that were learned from Vietnam. But two main foreign policy events in 1983 led to the doctrine, being the 1983 Marine barracks bombing and the invasion of Grenada during Operation Urgent Fury. In Lebanon, terrorists bombed the Marine barracks, killing 241 American military personnel, 58 French military personnel, and 6 civilians. The attack caused policymakers to question why Americans were peacekeeping in Lebanon, and this will be its own video later, so don't really worry about it right now. Next was Operation Urgent Fury, which was the successful U.S. invasion of Grenada, which overthrew the communist government which had staged a coup against the constitutional government. The war was quick and easy for the U.S., and the next year Secretary of Defense Caspar Weinberger announced the Weinberger Doctrine, which had 6 points to it. The first of which was that the United States should not commit forces to combat unless the vital national interests of the United States or its allies are involved. 2 was that U.S. troops should only be committed wholeheartedly and with the clear intention of winning, otherwise troops should not be committed. 3, U.S. combat troops should not be committed without clearly defined political and military objectives and with the capacity to accomplish those objectives in mind. 4. The relationship between the objectives and the size and composition of the forces committed should be continually reasserted and adjusted if necessary. 5. U.S. troops should not be committed to battle without a reasonable assurance of U.S. support and public opinion as well as Congress. 6 was that U.S. commitment of troops should be considered only as a last resort. However, Weinberger and his doctrine would be tarnished by the Iran-Contra affair, where he played a crucial role in selling missiles to Israel, who sold them to Iran, and the profits were illegally sent to supply the Contras. The Powell Doctrine was created by General Colin Powell and former National Security Advisor and emerged after the successful U.S. coalition performance in the Gulf War and as a legacy of the results of the Korean and Vietnam Wars, debating the never again versus limited war policies of either win a war or don't start a war versus wage a long and limited war. It was largely based on the Weinberger Doctrine and poses questions emphasizing national security interests, overwhelming strike capabilities with an emphasis on ground forces, and widespread public support regarding military action. The Powell Doctrine states that the following questions all have to be answered affirmatively before military action should be taken by the United States. 1. Is a vital national security interest threatened? 2. Do we have a clear, attained objective? 3. Have the risks and costs been fully and frankly analyzed? 4. Have all other non-violent policy means been fully exhausted? 5. Is there a plausible exit strategy to avoid endless entanglement? 6. Have the consequences of our actions been fully considered? 7. Is the action supported by the American people? And 8. Do we have genuine broad international support? Did you know about the Reagan, Weinberger, and Powell doctrines before this video? Which one do you think is most plausible for U.S. foreign policy during the Cold War? Write in the comments below, and thank you for watching.